Thank you. Well, what a week to have a title of a session with that, because I'll just preface this in the sense that I have about as much idea of all of you, I'm sure, right now, after Monday and Tuesday's announcement. So let's give it a crack anyway, and I'm going to give it my best shot. You can ask me lots of questions. I'm a totally open book. So yeah, as you're thinking through, make sure you ask me. So hi, I'm Kiwanuka from the Shaper Group. Next slide. I thought I'd tell you a bit about myself. So number one on the list, I'm a mum. I am the founder of the Shaper Group, which includes Event Shaper, an operational management company in the exhibition field. Ops Shaper, which is a training company in operational management, and the Ops Nest, which is my new venture, which is an operational membership community. I'm also Vice Chair of ESSA, and I take the chair in January of the Event Services and Suppliers Association. So what a year to take the reins on that one. I'm also a co-founder of Eventwell Pledge with Helen Moon from Eventwell, which I'll talk to you a bit more about later. Just to warn you, I'm traditionally exhibition based. I have some experience in the other sectors, but my core is exhibitions. So this is slightly exhibition focused. I'm an entrepreneur, which drives my team absolutely mad when I come up with crazy ideas that I think we need to go for. And I'm a tea lady. And the reason I put that on there is that my goal is to have more time to make tea in the future years. So why did I include all of those things? Ultimately, is because right now we need to use everything we've got. So next slide, please. The role of the future event manager going forward is going to need to encompass every little facet that you have in your life, whether it's personal or work-based. All of it's going to be drawn on in terms of experience. So, next slide. Let's look at what our current skills are in our role, and just get down to basics. We are amazing at finding the baseline, so finding the true essence of something, to understand the core of a problem and work from there. We're great at learning what that problem is, figuring out the reasons for that problem, figuring out the potential solutions for that problem, figuring out who we need around us to resolve that problem. That's what we're brilliant at. We're amazing at sourcing solutions. In fact, we're absolutely awesome at finding solutions from different people around us, different ways of thinking, lateral thinking, all that and the blue sky stuff that the corporates talk about. We've got that in bundles. We're not very good at waiting, but we do know how to wait. Quite often our job involves waiting for the right time to solve a problem. It involves waiting for a solution to come back to us, or a supplier to give us something, or a client to give us something. Whether we like it or not, we're good at it. We might not like it, but we are good at it. So stick that in your arsenal. And we're amazing at checking on our suppliers and our network. Our network is everything to us. So if we're going to look past events for a moment and see what we are fundamentally good at, whether you need to do that for what you're going to do next, or if you just need to do it for your soul right now, just really take some time to understand what you are absolutely awesome at. And I think those are kind of list our main things. Going back to my profile, you also have your personal layer on top of all of those things that we're naturally good at in doing what our job is. And don't forget that personal layer, because when times are hard, that personal layer means everything. It can mean the difference between success or failure. Next slide, please. Okay, so I can't not mention this, what our current problem is. We have no date, we have no money, we have no energy. I don't know about you. I've been running a sprint for 6 months now. And I think Rupert Bastidoni said it perfectly on LinkedIn the other day when he said, it feels like we've climbed the hill of the brow of a hill only to see Everest in front of us. we have been at, there's a bunch of people that have been at solving this problem for 6 months, and it's been exhausting. So there's a lack of energy in the room, whether that is from people that have been at it for the last 6 months, but also lack of energy, I think, from people that unfortunately have been furloughed or made redundant. 6 months is a long time to be motivated. And this week has just been a horror. We are also planning on sand. We don't know what 6 months' time looks like. We don't know if it is 6 months' time, might it be brought forward? We don't know the environment that we're really playing in. And we are trying to fix things with as few adjustments as possible. And I will talk about this more as I go on, but ultimately, we are trying to fix what we currently do, but with some adjustments. And maybe we need to rethink that. Next slide, please. So going back to kind of what we've got at our disposal, we talked about the profile of you as an individual, talked about our kind of general skill set that we as event managers already have, but maybe don't spend enough time recognizing that that's our core skill set. Now we've got tools. So I would recommend, and I've written some more detail later as well, but just nuts and bolts, what's at our disposal now that we can make a difference to what we're going to do next. And that is, first of all, the guidance. We do have the guidance. I'm going to go through it a little bit in a moment. The first thing we need to do is read, absorb, understand that guidance, get under the skin of that guidance and start looking at how that feels in a past event that you've done, and for you to foresee what you're going to need to do. We've got masses of learning opportunities, and what a great industry we work in with such open source learning right now. There's loads out there, so just take advantage of as much as possible, but also look at what new skills you're going to require, which we'll also talk about in a minute. Understand we've got time at our disposal, and that feels like a negative, but actually we need to use it as a positive. We've got 6 months now to nail this, so let's get cracking. We've got tenacity and creativity, which does feel like sometimes our creativity can be stifled by the problems around us, but we need to really get that going now. And we've got collaboration. We have never been more connected with our industry as we are right now. That might feel bad sometimes when you're looking at LinkedIn, but just if that's the case, just don't look at LinkedIn for that day. So we take our profile, we take our core skills, we take the tools of the guidance, our learning opportunities now, and we put ourselves in the best possible position for the future. So next slide, please. So as I said, I'm going to give you a bit of a very brief overview as to the guidance, and this is specifically for exhibitions. Just a note, if you're not in exhibitions, which I know a lot of you aren't, just go to the source of your guidance. I know there's banqueting guidance and conference guidance and that has been put through. We were really, really chuffed. That seems a weird word to use. I was totally chuffed actually when our pilot kind of passed with flying colours the other day. So at least confidently we can say at this present time, if we were to run events, this guidance would underpin it. I'm not sure what that will look like in 6 months' time, but right now we have one certainty, and that is if everything was flying in our favour, we would have been able to open. The good thing about the guidance for exhibitions is that at the very heart of it, it's realistic and it's risk assessed. Every event is obviously very different. We've got our core mechanisms and our core structure of an event, but actually every event brings something different, an anomaly, a different audience, a different demonstration or whatever. So it was really important that the guidance was underpinned by a risk assessed approach, and thank God that the associations, AO, AV and ESSA, and the main organisers that put this together recognise that at the very basis, because the whole document, which is called the All Secure document, is based on risk assessment. It's not overly onerous, so for those shows that are light touch in terms of risk, it doesn't confine them to a lot of things that will cost a lot of money. It is achievable. as was proved by the pilot. So there's 4 key headings: social distancing, cleaning and hygiene, protect and detect, and communication. So we're just going to cover the top line bits of each of those now. If we could have the next slide, please. So social distancing, pretty obvious this one, but the elements that are under particular scrutiny are obviously the calculation, the density calculation of your event. How many people can you fit in at any one point and keep them safe? So in the guidance it states 2 meters with 1 meter mitigation. There is a 10 square meter note in there, which is basically equivalent to if you drew 2 meters round a person. It's 9 point something or other. Anyway, concentrate and focus on the 2 meters or 1 meter with mitigation. And there's particular emphasis on the control of entry and the final mile. So where are they coming from? How are they getting there? What public transport are they using? What problems are outside of your front door, if you see what I mean. Flow management around the space is obviously critical, particularly around content areas of particular focus, where people might be drawn in particular. Those areas themselves, how those are spaced out and managed. Behaviour and how you manage and influence people's behaviour in the space is also very important for social distancing. Things like handshakes. Do you hug? Do you not hug? Clearly you don't hug, but trying to make people not hug is very difficult. So talking about how you can influence that behaviour. And the management, obviously, and control of people's behaviour in that space. Second on the list is cleaning and hygiene. Again, no surprise there. Touch point cleaning is obviously name of the game there, and the kind of venue cleaning, so handrails, door handles, lift buttons, toilets, all that kind of stuff. But the ongoing cleaning regime, so if you've put an event space together out of an empty hall, you're going to create additional cleaning requirements, and that's going to need to go on throughout the day as well. So next slide, please. Protect and detect. Well, this is the one that's come a cropper really over the last few weeks, particularly with Southampton Boat Show. The local authority engagement, Public Health England. Most event venues, you are somewhat protected by the venue itself, who would hold the relationship. Now there has to be an understanding. There are organisations outside of that have understanding who they are, what they are. So the involvement of Public Health England, any SAG group activities, so your state advisory groups, your local authority engagement, you need response plans for an outbreak or infection rates and the things, both in the run up to the event and the event itself. And you obviously need to have contact tracing, which most of us in events have got that nailed from the get-go. Because we all contact our clients rather than kind of a restaurant or walk-in situation. And finally, so communication, all parties, stand contractors, suppliers, as team, attendees, obviously, exhibitors, your own organising team. This community message is only ever bigger, and it needs relevant and realistic. I went to the pilot for exhibitions and found myself wanting more messages, which I miss unsubscribe. You know, someone emails me, I'll unsubscribe straight away. I made it a New Year's resolution, and yet in this environment, 2 days out from the event, I was like, oh, I haven't heard anything. And I shocked myself. We need to be aware that like marketing is going to really need to change to make our attendees feel particularly comfortable. That ongoing messaging is kind of what I mean there, and and it needs to be realistic. So one thing that we need to really work on is the fact that marketing can no longer kind of ham up the experience. If we have attendees that come on site that have been marketed to, and it's anything less than what they actually purely see in front of them, we will lose them forever. I can't be the only person that's gone into a restaurant expecting one experience, getting very much kind of regime than I was told, and deciding I'm probably going to go somewhere else in future. So I think really focus on that. The nuts and bolts of the guidance. I have done a kind of a guide to the guidance, which I did in August. Bearing in mind the pilot has passed, it's actually still pretty relevant. And I'll give the guys at VNE a code for you guys. It's only £5 anyway, but I'll give you guys a free code to go in and access it if you want any further information or more depth to it. So now moving on to the next slide, please. So what about now? Where are we at now? And I hope you're not thinking I'm going to give you an idea of how to transition into the virtual world, because I'm not there. Virtual totally has its place. We're obviously on a virtual platform, but it doesn't really float my boat, so I'm not going there. We need to understand what we've got in the wider world that is of benefit, because even if you only need, as an event manager, to think about a temporary solution outside of our current situation, then you need to know how you transfer those skills that we talked about at the beginning into reality. If I were you, and this is certainly what we're doing as well, we're looking at what markets are flying. So looking at what really is going hell for leather. And also then looking at which markets are flying and what markets need us. So what markets need project management, scheduling, con management, adaptability, time focus. I think one thing that we are exceptionally good at is pulling together something in a really short space of time. I can't be the only one. When they were saying about, the Nightingales being built in 9 days, I was like, 9 days? Why did it take them that long? Whereas the rest of the world was going, wow, 9 days, we did it in 9 days. I was like, wow, they must have had a couple of days go a bit wrong, because we built stuff like that in far less than that. We are really good at working under pressure, and our skills are totally adaptable. But I recognise, and I'm there too, I'm not giving up on events. Live events is where my heart is. And so if you are sticking to events, then we'll go on to the next slide. Okay, so we do need to pivot, and virtual is part of that, in the sense that if we replace virtual with online, we've created a membership community called the Oxnest, which is an online platform. That's ultimately where we meet. It's not an event, but we are using an online space. It might be a different form of event. So you just look around you, and we're going to talk about seizing opportunities and looking for gaps in a minute. Learning, we need to be ready. We need to be so ready to get out those gates when we come live. We need to find a crystal ball, which I know might sound hairy-fairy, but by that is we need to become the experts at understanding human behaviour, and we need to become the experts in understanding the virus and its transmission. We've got 6 months now. Now is the time to really get with what we can do to take away the risks associated with virus transmission and the human behaviour towards that. What I mean by that is I never really understood some of the impact until I went down to the pilot as a visitor. And I noticed very quickly some things that I just had never thought about before. You have to go to a pilot to understand these things. You can start just being an expert in human behaviour in a pub, in the spaces where people can congregate. Watch what they do and how do people react. So I'm going to give you one thing here which really struck me. The organiser of the pilot had obviously put tables and chairs spaced out around the area for people to sit down and have a chat. What I found is people who would normally stand in a gangway and have a chat don't want to sit at the table. They want to stand and have a chat, because it's one of those, if you sit down, you're caught, you're stuck. But in an event space, quite often you want to be able to go have a chat and they go, oh, sorry, just seen someone, I'm going to head off. It's very hard to do that when you're sat down. So actually, our preference might be to have standing spaces. So just even things like that, watching how people are interacting, watching how they're adapting to the situation we're in is going to be absolutely crucial in creating great environments going forward. We also need to find our workarounds. What can we do? We know what we can't do, but what can we do? We've just put out for register your interest for a lunch in a restaurant with a side order of content, for example. So, and we don't know if that's going to go ahead yet. So don't bank on that as a yes, that we're going to go down there. But just start exploring what we can do versus what we can't. Next slide, please. Not only in terms of the online space and virtual space, but we need we really good at. How can we adapt our skills into that space? But also, how do we adapt? For me, our technological skills, and maybe work those in a different way. We need to change our role. So we are going to be relied on to be the people that create the events and even more so make those events happen. We've got massively increased responsibility in that regard. So we need to adapt our role and understand what our new role is. Is our role to prevent transmission in our event spaces? And if it is, you need to start understanding that. We need to change our output. So coming back to what I was just talking about in terms of standing and some of the other reactions, especially around wearing a mask and noise levels in an ambient, quite a high ambient noise space, and how people cope with that. I went straight to the cafe, for example. You need to understand how people are adapting and change the style of the event to fit it. We need to play the advantage. There will be some. I don't know them all yet, but there will be some. Make sure you're best placed and to be watching for them, even the little slithers and snippets. There will be advantage in this. So be realistic. The numbers won't be the same. What is holding back? What's holding the solutions back? I need to find the constraints of which we're operating, the contracts under which we operate, might hold us back, and we need to find what they are, and we need to lobby for an alternative. It might be that we need to rewrite some of the rules of the industry we're working in. So next slide, please. So what you should be learning: the guidance, the law, understanding the law of who could shut you down, for example, technology, learn new project management tools, new communication tools, new tech solutions for COVID, find what our workarounds are, what environments do work, what doesn't work, and you can do this just in your day-to-day life. You need to figure out what the fears are, what the fears are of the exhibitors, but also the fears of the government. What is stopping the government from allowing us to open, and how can we adapt events to take some of those fears away? That's a big one. but we need to get stacking on it. I would fathom that it is around the cross-country reach that events have. We're not just going up the road to the pub. We're going 100 miles to an event, and that has significant issues. How can we work with that? How can we control it? Does it make it more regional focused? We need to understand the key players. You need to get to understand the people that are likely to shut you down, and you need to get to know them, and you need to influence them to ensure that they are comfortable and confident with what you're putting in place. So next slide, please. So a couple of ideas on here, not that they're all massively well thought out, but going back to kind of figuring out what the fears of the government are and what are potential solutions, regional solutions where people are maintained in spaces, in areas, is potentially an angle to go down. Outdoor solutions, we've already seen outdoor events have had a higher success rate of running than indoor. Second options and backup plans. You need to start figuring out what those are, but ultimately brainstorm, get back to basics, and don't rely on the existing model as being your final option. You might need to make something round instead of square, but yeah, just look at the art of the possible. So what next? And I'm nearly close to wrapping up here. Sorry, skip that one. I forgot to say skip slide. Yes. Well, next, entrench yourself in the community if you haven't already. Sometimes it can be painful, but just make sure you're surrounding yourself by the right people. Keep on top of the information. If you're part of an association, use it. If you're not part of an association, find it. They've usually got open source information that can be shared with you as well. Follow them on LinkedIn to make sure you're abreast of the latest developments. There's a campaign on the 30th of September, We Make Events. Have a look at that. We need to make some noise. Support or access Eventworld Pledge. So Eventworld Pledge is a mechanism for you to either give or receive support, whether that's time, money, something. You can offer anything. On the other side of that, you can access it. And accept a pledge if you are in need. I think this is going to be really important in the next few months in our industry. And sometimes we just don't know how to help people. So that's a mechanism you can use to support. If you want to know any more about what we're doing at the Shaper Group or in the Ops Nest, then I've put their web address on there to sign up as a learner, and we'll be in touch with you. And then final slide, thank you very much. If you've got any questions, I'm here to answer them. Follow me on socials, and there we go. Good luck.
Thanks, Lou. That was really great and really informative. I'm sure lots of people have lots of questions on that. Just from our perspective, do you think we can return to live events, exhibitions as we know them now, or do you think there has to be that element of change? Just from a mindset perspective, as well as a layout perspective, do you think people need to change their mindset of what they expect from going to a live event?
I think we'd be foolish not to take the opportunity to seize different ways of working. None of us can say that every event we put out has been perfect. So let's use it as a mechanism to find some alternative ways. Hopefully, we'll keep the best of what we've had before and make it better. That's our mission. I guess that if we were to sum up what the role of the future event manager is, that's our job, to make sure we maintain the best bits and we create even better bits rather than take the heart out of events.
Definitely, and I guess positivity is a key part of that as well. And you guys mentioned obviously your work with Eventworld and the Eventworld Pledge. Do you just want to quickly recap that again to anyone that missed that earlier? How, I think Helen rapped on it yesterday. But it is a really sorry. Just saying the Eventworld Pledge, and I know that's important to you, and Helen kind of touched on it yesterday, but do you just want to give the viewers a kind of idea on what that involves? And how they can get involved and
Yeah, sure.
support for
I'd
that?
love to. That's the thing I'd love to talk about most. We are an amazing community, and after seeing a lot of people on LinkedIn kind of saying, "Oh, if I can help you, let me know." There's a lot of individuals doing that. I don't know about you, I needed help. Sometimes you might want it to be anonymous. And likewise, if you want to help, sometimes you want to help, but you don't want to shout about it either. Um, so we could set up Event Well Pledge so that individuals could could say what they could give. So whether it was an hour of their time for a peer-to-peer chat, or money for an outfit for an interview, or travel for an interview, or 15 quid for a gift for their children for Christmas. We wanted a mechanism in place to make that happen, and an easy mechanism for people who really do need it to be able to access it we're all talking about stronger together, but it's about making sure it's not just a hashtag.
Of course. And we've got a question here from Katie that says, what one skill do you think event managers should be working on right now to make them more resilient in the future?
Oh, what one skill? Resilience. Like, I know that's not a skill, but it's the thing I think we all need to work on most. What's in your core, the kernel of your soul. That's what's being hit the hardest right now for most people in what we do. You need to nail that, because the rest of it is redundant if you as a person don't keep it together.
Definitely. We've also just had another question in that says, will cafe areas specifically, I know you talked about the catering side of things and, lunch and so forth, will they have to be bigger? And, you said about people preferring to stand after in an area rather than sitting. Can we not sit at tables after, someone sat down there? Will there be an enhanced cleaning around that? How do you see that kind of working? Obviously, lunchtime is one of the most busiest areas at an exhibition. How do you kind of see that working on site?
So I think catering areas are going to need to be bigger, more of them. I think catering areas might potentially be one of the things that supports us, helps us in creating an event going forward. Um, on an exhibition floor, often the catering area is put wherever there isn't a stand that's been sold. So it's definitely
Yeah,
secondary to the commercial gain of the event. I think going forward, events are going to need to plan in catering areas more effectively, more throughout the event, because I, for one, know that I went to a catering really quickly at the pilot because there's only so much time I could communicate with a mask on. So I think in terms of the standing and chatting thing, it wasn't that I didn't want to sit down. If there'd been a coffee station there, I would have sat down, because you'd sit down, have a coffee, and then there's a social mechanism to extract yourself from the table. When you finish your coffee, you can then go. Sitting at a table for an undefined space doesn't work with how human behavior is.
of course. There's just one other point I wanted to kind of touch on is the role between marketing and ops, as you mentioned. Obviously, they work quite closely together anyway in terms of putting an event together. But do you think that kind of has to be like a combined role now, with communication being key? How do you see that working in the future?
Um, it's so important. So Katie, who I think was on yesterday, or might be on later, and
Later.
I have been talking heavily about it. Because we're going to need to figure out all the reasons why we wouldn't talk to each other about something or other, and make sure we are fully aligned. I think the collaboration between sales, marketing, and operations is going to have to be seamless in every way, not just with marketing, but with sales as well.
Absolutely. We've just had another question in which I think is kind of interesting about pricing regarding venues and exhibition centres. Obviously, with the social distancing now, we can only hold a certain amount of stands or a certain amount of space. Do you think venues will have to reflect their pricing structure to cope with that adjustment?
I think we need to be careful there, because if there's change that, then surely the organisers need to do that with exhibitors. Like, it's a chain. That's why I think actually we need to look at how we construct our industry going forward altogether. The met constraints, the contacts, the tendencies that are in place. It's very easy to say, well, we can only use half that space now, so you should charge us half that amount. But do we not want venues going forward? Because we're going to have to keep them in business somehow. Maybe it's more about that we all need to sit down and figure out the price, how the models could be adapted, and actually what we're offering to our exhibitors. We offer on a per meter basis, but actually what we're selling to them is an opportunity for them to do business. It's just us that have created that and have valued that as a per meter. So well, that's what I mean. We need to kind of sit down and kind of unravel it all and see where the blockers are. Because ultimately, at the end of it, we still want a venue to exist. We still want an organizer to exist. We still want an exhibitor to exist, and suppliers, contractors, and the whole supply chain.
100%. I think it again comes around to that conversation we had with marketing and ops, that communication is now more key than ever within the industry, and we all need to sit down together. And I think it goes back to a word that was mentioned yesterday, is collaboration in the industry is the most important thing that we can kind of be doing moving forward. There's a question that's come in that says, have we found an easy way of swapping business cards, a substitute for swapping business cards when networking? Is that something you've thought about or had any experience of within the pilot events?
So I think not at the pilot event. Technology is already streaming ahead on that front with like RFID tagging and things like token and yeah, there's so much technology linked into the registration companies where data can be swapped between parties. I think we were mostly there before anyway, and now we'll only ever get better. Whether that turns into kind of facial recognition, data transfer, or I mean, the whole world is at our feet now. We need to go and find these solutions.
Definitely, and obviously the on-site experience will be a little bit different. I can imagine traditionally at an exhibition you would pick up a show guide, for example, when you enter the building. But now I'm assuming that more people will go towards the technology side and use the apps and that type of thing.
It's weird, it's like there's been some knee-jerk reactions in terms of what we can and cannot have at events going forward, and I definitely think the touch point process of a show guide has different challenges assigned to it, and show guides were coming down and down anyway, so maybe it is time for them to go out. However, some people really do love to sit and look through something or keep something, and actually, if that's the case, if that's your audience, if that show guide means something more to them and it's something deep, then it's our job now to figure out how we do that with a non-touch environment. There
Of
will be
course,
ways,
yeah.
there will be a mechanism.
Yeah, there
We
will
just
be.
haven't got it yet. We haven't talked about it yet. But we've got 6 months to figure it out.
Yeah, time is of the essence as such. Just a final question. It says, do you see virtual reality becoming a big part of networking and events with its limitless possibilities of space, location, and product tools?
Well, I never thought I'd say it, but it wasn't long into lockdown that my son, who's 13, got super excited about going online in Fortnite. He spent 15 quid on a new skin for it, met his mates in there, danced amongst a 45-foot virtual inflatable something or other, and came out. And the way he talked about that event, it was like he'd actually been there. So I don't know that space. I'm 47. I think I need to do a lot of work to catch up on that space. But I do recognise that in his voice, he felt like he'd been to an event. And I think that is so exciting. I think we've a long way to go to connect those worlds, the world that we live in versus the world that he lives in. But we better crack on and do it, because he's going to be 18 in 5 years, and he's, he is our future attendee.
Of course, absolutely. We've had lots of obviously questions, and lots of people have commented that they found their presentation really useful. Will you be able to make these slides available post event? We can host those for you. And is there any kind of free resource? I know you mentioned the Ops Nest. I just don't know if you wanted to go into that a little bit more before we finish.
Oh, cool. Yeah, so the Ops Nest, we're kind of in our launch phase, so we're kind of opening up more fully in January. I think we've got about 20 spaces left between now and then to be filled. But we're kind of proper launching it in January. So you'll see loads on socials. If you can follow us on socials, that would be great. And if you're interested in joining now, it's a paid for membership, so it's 35 quid a month, and you can go on the website and see what's included in that. But in terms of free resource, I'll send you a code for the guide to the guidance. Like I said, it's about 2 months old now, so just as you're listening to it, to bear in mind it's before this week. In terms of knowledge, we were hoping for a 1st of October dateline when it was recorded. So, but yeah, absolutely, go into that and it'll give you a good rundown of the exhibition guidance and how we got there, the kind of things around it that made decisions at the time.
Great. Thank you so much, Lou. I know that presentation was really useful to a lot of people, and a lot of people have said, it's really interesting to see your kind of viewpoint on there. So yeah, that was fantastic. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. It's great to be here. Good luck with
Thank
the rest of
you.
the event.
Thank you.